Real people, real confessions, the stories you weren't supposed to hear. Welcome to Beyond Reddit Stories. It started like any other late Tuesday evening. I was exhausted, my head pounding from a 12-hour shift, and the thought of boiling instant noodles for dinner felt like too much effort. I ordered an Uber, just another ride home in silence, scrolling through my phone, pretending not to exist. The car pulled up. I opened the door, slid inside, and before I could even buckle my seatbelt, my heart froze. There he was, the driver, the man behind the wheel, the same man who vanished from my life a year ago without a single word, the man who left me staring at my phone for weeks, wondering what I did wrong, the man who held my hand like I was everything, and then disappeared like I was nothing. And now he was my Uber driver. He didn't look exactly the same, maybe a little more tired, a bit older around the eyes, but it was him. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might be sick right there in his back seat. I debated getting out, pretending I had the wrong car, but something made me stay. Curiosity, rage. Maybe I just wanted to know if he'd recognize me or if I'd become just another face he forgot. I didn't say his name, I just stared at the back of his head, heart pounding so hard I could hear my own pulse. He glanced at me through the mirror, just one quick glance, and something flickered in his expression. Recognition, or maybe guilt. We hadn't spoken a word yet, but my mind was screaming. Was this fate, karma, some sick joke from the universe, forcing me to sit through a 20-minute ride with the ghost of my past? All I knew was this wasn't going to be just another Uber ride. This was about to become the most uncomfortable, twisted, and weirdly poetic confrontation I never asked for. Before all of this, before the ghosting, before the Uber ride from hell, I was just a regular woman trying to make sense of adulthood. My name is Lauren. I work a monotonous office job at a law firm as a paralegal. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. My days were simple coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard, spreadsheets, deadlines, polite small talk with coworkers I barely connected with. I wasn't unhappy, just numb in that quiet, comfortable way people get when life isn't terrible but also isn't exciting. I lived alone in a small apartment just outside the city, decorated with fairy lights and cheap IKEA furniture I convinced myself looked minimalist. My weekends consisted of laundry, reality TV, and occasionally swiping on dating apps when loneliness hit at 2 a.m. That's how I met him, Ethan. We matched on a dating app one night when I was half asleep and bored. His profile wasn't anything exceptional, a few photos of him hiking, a sarcastic bio about loving dogs more than humans. But we started talking, and somehow, those conversations felt different. He made me laugh. He seemed thoughtful. Before I knew it, we were texting every day, planning meetups, sharing music, inside jokes, late-night confessions about childhood and trauma and dreams. It felt real. We dated for 3 months. 3 genuinely good months. Nothing fancy ramen dates, thrift store Saturdays, late-night drives where he'd hold my hand and tell me I made him feel safe. He wasn't perfect, not by any means, but he made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. And then one day he just stopped replying. One morning he said, "Talk later," and that was it. No calls, no texts. I messaged him maybe 4 times before realizing he had ghosted me completely. He blocked me on everything, Kirkard, no explanation, vanished. I spiraled. I kept replaying every conversation, wondering if I'd said something wrong, if I'd been too much, not enough. For weeks I went to work like a zombie, cried in the bathroom stall, smiled politely as if nothing happened. Eventually, life continued. I rebuilt myself quietly. I convinced myself I had moved on, that his disappearance was just one of those modern dating tragedies we joke about to hide how much it actually hurts. And that's why sitting in his Uber now, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror, felt like the universe ripping open a wound I thought had already healed. The car was moving, but time felt frozen. I kept my eyes locked on the back of his head, silently waiting for him to speak first. My palms were sweaty, heart racing like I was about to testify in court. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Hey, Lauren, right." Hearing my name in his voice hit me like a punch to the stomach. I expected denial, pretending, anything but that. I answered quietly, "Yeah, funny seeing you again. Ethan. He gave a nervous laugh. Yeah, small world, I guess. Small world, that's what he had to say. The silence after that sentence was louder than any argument I've ever had. I leaned back, staring out the window, but my mind was screaming. I didn't plan on confronting him honestly. I thought I'd ignore him the entire ride, but something in me snapped. So, when were you planning on telling me you vanished because you're a coward? The words came out sharper than I intended, but also exactly how I felt. He stiffened in the driver's seat, his knuckles white around the steering wheel. I could see his jaw tighten in the mirror. I know I owe you an explanation. An explanation. You think so? I scoffed. You disappeared. No message. No goodbye. You blocked me on everything like I was some lunatic. He sighed, deep and heavy. I know. I messed up. It wasn't about you, Lauren. I was going through a lot. Stuff hit the fan. I lost my job. Got into debt. I didn't want you involved. I thought disappearing was better than dragging you down with me. I let out a bitter laugh. So instead you ghosted me because that's less hurtful, less complicated. His voice stayed low, almost guilty. I didn't know how to face you. I was ashamed. Ashamed. That word echoed in my chest. Part of me wanted to scream at him. Another part almost understood, but the anger was louder. You know what's funny? I said, leaning forward so he could hear every tremor in my voice. I spent months thinking I did something wrong. I tore myself apart wondering why you left. I blamed myself for being too much, and you were just, sad, ashamed. That's it. He didn't respond. The car slowed as we hit traffic, a long, congested street of brake lights and honking horns. We were stuck, literally trapped in this metal box of unresolved feelings. I continued, do you have any idea how humiliating it is to realize someone can just delete you from their life without explanation? Like you never mattered. He looked at me through the mirror. His eyes were glossy. You did matter. That's why I left. I didn't want to ruin what we had. Oh, please, I cut him off. Don't romanticize it. You didn't want to face consequences. That's what this was. He swallowed hard, staring forward. You're right, I was selfish. And I've regretted it every day. Some part of me wanted an apology, but another part of me realized I wasn't angry because of him anymore. I was angry because I let him define my worth for so long. So what now? I asked. You want forgiveness, closure. He shook his head. No, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know it wasn't your fault, and I'm sorry. Traffic still wasn't moving. The moment stretched between us, raw and uncomfortable, and for the first time in a year, I felt something shift inside me, a pressure release. Not because his apology fixed anything, but because I finally said what I needed to say. I'm not the same girl you walked away from, I said quietly, and I don't need your apology to move on. But I needed to say this. He nodded silently, eyes focused on the road. There was no dramatic outburst, no begging, just two people sitting in a car full of ghosts and regret. And somehow, the silence that followed didn't hurt as much anymore. The car inched forward, bumper to bumper, outside. People were honking, cursing. The kind of chaos that usually stressed me out, but right now, it felt like background noise to something much bigger unraveling between us. I stared at Ethan's reflection again. Something in me wanted to keep pushing, to dig deeper, like if I kept asking questions, I could finally make sense of the pain he caused. But for the first time, instead of wanting revenge or closure, I wanted something else, clarity. For myself. You know, I said, voice steady but shaking underneath. I used to romanticize you. I turned you into this incredible what if in my head. When you disappeared, I didn't just lose you, I lost who I thought I was when I was with you. He blinked, silently listening. And now, sitting here, I continued, I realized you weren't this great love story. You were just a chapter I refused to close. He swallowed. I know. His voice cracked slightly. I messed you up, but I messed myself up too. I lost everything after I left. My job, my apartment. My mom got sick and I couldn't even help her because I was broke and spiraling. I tried getting therapy, tried drinking it away. Nothing worked. I became this version of myself I hated, and somehow convinced myself disappearing from your life was the only thing I could control. There it was, this truth beneath all the excuses. His life had crumbled, but so had mine in a different way. I became someone who doubted everyone, including myself. His sadness didn't excuse mine, but it made it feel human, messy, real. And did abandoning me make you feel better? I asked. He shook his head. No, it made everything worse. For a second, we both just sat there in silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy but honest. A weird sense of calm started to settle. Not forgiveness, but understanding a darker, more complicated form of it. Then he said something I didn't expect. I still keep that photo of us, he whispered. The one from that ramen shop. I haven't deleted it. That hit me harder than I thought it would. Not because it was sweet, but because it was pointless. A reminder that some people hold on to memories. Not out of love, but out of guilt. You know what I did after you left? I said, voice shaky. I deleted every trace of you, every picture, every message. I even tossed out the coffee mug you left at my place. I tried to erase you, but the trauma stayed anyway. He stared out at the windshield, his voice barely above a whisper. You became someone stronger because of me, and I became someone weaker because of what I did to you. That sentence, it landed heavier than any apology, because it was true. I had turned my pain into something that made me tougher, more guarded. He had turned his guilt into a prison. I looked out the window and realized maybe the closure I needed wasn't about him apologizing. It was about me finally seeing things as they were. He wasn't a villain or a hero. He was just a broken man who broke someone else along the way. And I survived it. The traffic finally began to move, slowly. The air between us felt different, lighter, somehow. As we approached my street, I took a deep breath. You don't owe me anything else, I said, but you should owe yourself something. Fix yourself for real this time. Don't keep writing apologies you never say out loud. He nodded, eyes red but dry. I'm trying. I really am. There was a pause, and then, for the first time since that ride began, I felt my chest loosen. A quiet, unexpected peace washed over me. Because the truth had finally been spoken, not perfectly, not romantically, just honestly. And that was enough. I stepped out of the car, finally free of that cramped, tension-filled space. The air felt sharper, cooler, as if the city itself had noticed the weight I'd been carrying for a year and decided to lift it for me. I realized something: closure doesn't always arrive with fireworks or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a moment of recognition, seeing the person who hurt you as flawed, human, and finally feeling like your own life isn't defined by their choices. That ride could have destroyed me all over again. I could have spent it stewing in anger or shame, but instead, I chose to confront it calmly, to speak my truth, and to acknowledge my growth. That moment, the honesty, the confrontation without bitterness, was the kind of victory no one can take away. I walked into my apartment that night feeling lighter than I had in months. My walls didn't hold echoes of pain. My small, minimalist living room felt like a sanctuary. I made myself a cup of tea, sat down, and realized I wasn't defined by someone else's actions. I was defined by my resilience, my courage to face discomfort, and my willingness to embrace the messy human reality of relationships. And maybe that's the lesson. Life will throw people in your path who disappear, hurt, or disappoint you. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. But what matters isn't their absence or their mistakes. It's what you do with your own story. Do you let it control you, or do you take it, digest it, and use it to strengthen yourself? I can't tell you that Ethan and I will ever have a normal friendship. I can't promise that ghosting won't happen again in some other form in someone else's life. But I can tell you this: I survived it, I grew from it, and I emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable of seeing both people and situations for what they really are, rather than what I wish they were. Sometimes, growth is quiet. Sometimes it's riding in a car with someone from your past and realizing you're no longer the same person you were when it all began. And that, I think, is more powerful than any grand cinematic ending could ever be. As I closed my apartment door that night, I couldn't help but think about how many people out there are still carrying ghosts from their past relationships that ended abruptly, people who hurt them, or moments they can't quite understand. If you've ever been ghosted, abandoned, or just left hanging by someone you cared about, know this: your story doesn't end with them. You get to define your own ending. You get to decide what lessons you carry forward and what baggage you leave behind. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever run into someone from your past and been forced to confront everything you thought you'd left behind? Or have you had a closure moment that changed the way you see yourself? Share your experiences in the comments. I read every single one. And sometimes your stories inspire the next video. If the story resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. There are countless stories out there, just like mine, full of irony, surprises, and lessons we never expected to learn. And if you stick around, you might just find a story that feels like it was written for you. Remember, the past may shape us, but it doesn't define us. We do. And sometimes, the strangest, most uncomfortable encounters can become the moments that make us strongest.